Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to News from the Torah. I am Leah Aharoni. Today is the 23rd day of the Hebrew month of August 1st, and this week we're reading the Torah portion of Re'eh. Re'eh means look, watch, perceive. Look, I am putting before you today blessing and curse, and it is all about the choices that we make that shape if we live a life of blessing or, God forbid, the opposite. And this entire show this week will be about the choices we make. Choices we make as individuals, choices we make as societies and as communities, choices that we make as private individuals and public people. We'll talk about choices in our life of how you actually perceive life. We will go to Tokyo Olympics to see how the choices that the athletes are making are influencing our outlook on the world and our choices. And we'll also discuss the choices the American Jewish community is making as a whole, as more and more young American Jews choose to distance themselves from Israel and from their Jewish identity. So what are the choices you are making? What are the choices that you're making in your life, in your community, and in society in general? We are 1 week away from the first day of the Hebrew month of Elul. Elul is the last month of the year and is the month when we take stock of our life, reflect, and consider the ways we want to go forward in the new Jewish year. Elul is usually considered to be dark. It is full of Jewish guilt. Yes, how can we live without Jewish guilt? And a lot of beating up of yourself, which is not how it is supposed to be. This is not how Elul is meant to be. It's supposed to be a time of reflection, taking stock, learning our lessons, understanding what was good this year, what needs to be improved, what are our growth opportunities, and with that understanding going forward to the new year. So before we embark on the reflection of Elul, we need to stop, look, and understand how we perceive the world so we can be more effective in it. So this is what this show will be all about. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss it.
The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago and is coming true today. Shalom. Join me, Josh Wander, on Israel Unplugged. Listen in as we delve into the spiritual and physical aspects of the Jewish return to Zion. We'll discuss the biblically mandated, historic, and of course practical understandings of this incredible transition from exile to redemption. That's Israel Unplugged, every Monday on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
Welcome back. So as we started talking about in the introduction, this week's Torah portion, Re'eh, starts literally with the word look. Look, I'm setting before you today blessing and curse. The blessing, if you listen to the commandments that Lord your God gives for you today, and a curse if you do not listen to the commandments that God is giving to you, and you stray from the path that I'm commanding you to take. And the question that we ask is, who is stupid enough to choose death? Who is stupid enough to choose curse? Who is stupid enough to reject life? And the answer is, it's all in the first word, in the word re'eh, look, perceive. What is your perception of reality? How do you look in the world? how you look at the world really shapes your entire life. Danish philosopher Kierkegaard said almost 300 years ago that none of us live in objective reality. We all live in our own subjective perception of an objective reality. Yes, there might be an objective reality out there, but none of us know what it is, and all of us look at it through glasses that are always colored. And actually, in some newer theories, there is no objective reality, and it is our consciousness that creates the world. The observer creates the universe. The observer, the person who looks, the consciousness, is what shapes the outcome. Has it ever happened to you that you went to town, you went shopping, you went out, and you needed your money, you needed your credit card, and you couldn't find it? No money, no credit card. You cannot do what you wanted to do, and you feel really poor and really desperate. And you come back home, you look again, and you see that $50 bill. You see that credit card stuck in a pocket you forgot to look at, or stuck somewhere between something. So the money was there the whole time. The credit card was there the whole time. But you didn't see it. You didn't perceive it. You didn't notice it. And that changed the whole reality. From being rich, you went to being poor. From being able, you went to being desperate. From being capable of proceeding with your agenda and your plans, you were incapable of doing what you needed to do. Or a different case, when you have an argument with somebody and you're sure that you're right, and you're thinking, this other guy, this other gal, ugh, so stupid, such a moron. Why is he doing that? Why is he thinking that? That's so silly. Or he's such a thief. Or she's such a crook. They're so wrong. And then one little piece of information and bang, what you feel is embarrassment, because it was not them who was a crook, and it was not them who was a moron. It was not them who was wrong. It was your mistake all along. Yes, it might have been an honest mistake, but it's your perception of reality that changed, not them. So yes, our perception, the way we look at the world, colors our existence every single day, every single moment. And God tells us, you have a choice every single moment. This is all that life is about, choices. This is what makes us human, the choices we make every single second. As you're listening to the show, you might be getting bored and making a choice to switch to a different program. Right now, if you're driving down the lane, you have a choice whether to drive safely or drive aggressively. If you're sitting at work, you have a choice to put your best foot forward, to show up, to do what needs to be done, to take your department, your company, your team forward, or to step back, to take it easy, not make any waves. We have those choices every single moment, and it is the choices that we make that define who we are, not anything else. And a person can change themselves with one little choice. That all that is life is all about, choices between life and death, between blessing and curse. So once again, why would anybody choose anything less than life and blessing? I'll tell you why. There is an outlook in Judaism that says that the entire purpose of life is to fix your midot, to fix what is called our character traits. But midot, or character traits, are really not really about character. They're about placing our emotional energies. Where do we choose to place our emotional energies every minute of the day? Are we placing our emotional energies with the fear? Or are we placing our emotional energies with the courage? Are we placing our emotional energies to worry? Or are we placing our emotional energies to find a solution? Where do you choose to place your emotional energies? And these emotional energies come in only two flavors: love embracing, coming closer to something, and rejection, hate, pushing away, coming close, pushing away. Those are the roots of the two types of emotional energy we have, and then everything else is just a subset of that. So what are our choice? What to come closer to, what to bring closer, what to draw near, and what to push away, to step aside from, to reject. That's the story. That's the choice we make every single second. And these emotional energies of drawing near and pushing off, they're called love of God and awe of God. God gave us these emotional energies to serve Him, to come closer to Him, to love Him, but also to understand that there has to be a healthy distance, and there has to be discipline and awe of God, and the ability to accept His kingship. This is the emotional energy that God gives us for His service, and it is always pure and beautiful and complete. But, says the Rebbe from Piasetzna, this is like placing clear water into a soiled cup. If you place clear water into a soiled glass, from the outside, it will seem soiled. It's not the water that is dirty, it is the cup that is stained. And each of one of us has an animal soul that has its own stains, its own outlooks, its own ways of seeing and interpreting reality, our own subjective outlooks. And they cloud our judgment, and they cloud the pure water of emotional energy that God gives us. But that's how creation is. That is the purpose of creation, for each one of us to examine our glass and to see where you need to wipe it down, where you need to wash it off. What are the stains on your own glass that are preventing your clear water of emotional energies from shining? These are the choices that we have to be making. And the first choice is to view yourself this way, to view yourself as a receptacle of clean, clear, holy, pure, godly spirit. This is who you are. And in Judaism, this is the very first prayer that we say in our formal prayers. God, you have given me a pure soul. Watching yourself, seeing yourself, accepting yourself as a pure soul is the first step that allows you to then to understand that it is not your soul that is broken, and you're certainly not broken. It is just that you have some stains on the glass, the external, and they can be washed off. That's what life is all about. And then if you take that approach to other people, you don't need to judge them favorably. You don't need to do them favors. You can see them as clear, beautiful, holy, pure souls with stains of their own glasses that they need to clean off. But that's their work, not yours. And that way we can really start appreciating each other for the souls that we are, not the stains on the glasses that we all have. And this is perhaps our biggest first choice for life. It is in this perception that we can see godliness in ourselves and in others and in the world. And also looking at the world not as a cruel, bad place that is out to get you, but perceiving godliness and God's life force and His benevolence and love for us in everything that happens in the world. And yes, this cup of the world, the glass of the world, has its own stains that we need to help to wash off. It is that you place your attention on that grows. It is that which you place your attention on that develops. It is that you place your attention on that forms your perception of the world and ultimately your entire experience and your world. Look for the good. Look for life. look for blessing, and you will find it. And if you don't, the opposite is also true. But don't go there. And don't go anywhere, because right after this break, we will come back to talk about more choices. So stay tuned.
Hi, everyone. This is Andrea Simento from Jerusalem, inviting you to drop everything and join me on my show, Pull Up a Chair. We'll visit this week's quirky stories, meet fabulous guests, and discover my Israel. Together, we'll laugh, shout, and explain the topics that make us say, hey, we've got to talk about that. So get comfortable and pull up a chair with me, Andrea Simento, every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
Welcome back. So, as we continue talking about choices this week, I want to address the Tokyo Olympics that are going on right now. Once every 4 years for the Summer Games and every 4 years for the Winter Games, the entire sports community of the world comes together for these beautiful exhibitionist games that this year are played without an audience due to COVID. Do you know what the origin of the Olympics is? And actually what the origin of the sports is. So the sports are named for Sparta. Sparta was an ancient Greek city-state of warriors, and it was so Spartan, quote unquote, and so ferocious that any child born with a birth defect would be thrown off a cliff because Spartan society had no room for people with disabilities. So Spartans are the people for whom we have named the sports. And the Olympics, what are the Olympics really about? Mount Olympus in Greek mythology is the mountain on which the gods resided, the gods of the ancient Greeks. So the Olympics were the games for people to become more, quote unquote, godly, faster, higher, stronger. In the Greek ideology, the faster you were, the stronger you were, the higher you could jump, the more you developed your body, the more godlike you were. Obviously, all of this is completely antithetical to Judaism. Yes, Judaism definitely recognizes the need for physical exercise. It's part of being healthy. And the Rambam, the greatest, perhaps, Jewish rabbi of the past 1,000 years, who codified Jewish law in the 12th century, and who was also a physician, writes in his Yad Chazakah, in his Mishnah Torah, in his Code of Jewish Law, that a person has to do exercise every morning to preserve their health. So we're not against exercise, and we're not against sports for recreational reasons. But professional sports especially are all about taking people's life and making it all about the body, taking out the spirit and making the body, the performance of the body, the do all and be all. And I think the events of this Olympics are showing a crack in that myth, in that outlook. And I think these cracks are so important. And I'm so happy to see that they're being met with understanding and even empathy and sympathy by the public. So the first story everybody's talking is the story of Simone Biles. She's an American gymnast who decided to step back from competing, citing mental health pressure and not wanting to get injured. She has taken some heat from people who say that she's too soft and she cannot stand up to pressure. But I think it's important to notice for once a person who says that the competitive nature of the games takes a toll on one's mental health. So first of all, she quoted something called the twisties. And gymnasts say that twisties is when a gymnast loses her ability to control her body. There is a certain inherent ability that gymnasts have that most of us lack, of perception of the body in space, and that makes them able to do these twists and turns and vaults and jumps that most of us find so difficult and unbelievable and impossible even. But twisties, what that does is it creates mental pressure, and the gymnast loses the ability to control her body in space and to monitor her body in space, and she can really get hurt if she makes the wrong turn or the wrong jump. The Olympics are a perfect reflection of how competitive the Western society is. Western society really is all about climbing the ladder, the sports ladder, the social ladder, the corporate ladder. It's all about competition and stepping on others to become number one. And then once you're number one, you have to defend that spot from others who also want to climb up and become number one. And competitive sports are probably the clearest example of this competitive nature of American society. So it is quite amazing that one of the leading, if not the leading, the strongest and the most brilliant gymnast of our generation, Simone Biles, says, I am going to step aside from the competition because the demands of it create a mental health crisis and a mental health tag, which I am not willing to pay. And I think this message is so important for every single person listening to this show, because every single one of us is paying both physical and mental health prices for living in the Western society. And no matter how Jewish you are, and no matter how religious you are, we are all infected with the Western ideology of competitiveness, of each person competing against the other, of everybody looking to the right and to the left to see what others are doing and running harder to pick up the pace and become number one, instead of actually competing against quote unquote yourself. Instead of finding the best you, understanding what is the best that is possible for you, and then running faster to become the best version of yourself. And there is definitely a mental health price to pay. And I'm so happy for Simone for not agreeing to please others, for not putting other people's preferences or expectations before her own health, physical health and mental health. And that's a question that every single one of us has to ask himself or herself. What prices am I paying to stay in this competition that I am in? And the competitions are different for every person. Some people are competing on the corporate ladder, and some people are trying to compete in their community, and some people are trying to compete in their family, and some people are trying to compete in their religious observance, trying to become better. But it's really not about the relationship to themselves or the relationship to God. It's about this kind of perfectionism of one-upping yourself or your neighbor or your fellow student and being the best that there is, the brightest, the smartest, the most accomplished. Let's stop with that, because we are not wired for that. Human beings are not wired for competitiveness. Monkeys are wired for competitiveness because they need to fight over bananas. We're human beings and we're not built for competitiveness. We are built for cooperation, for working together, for nurturing each other, for helping each other, not for outrunning each other and outjumping each other and outvaulting each other. So thank you to Simone Biles for finally holding up the mirror to each and every one of us and saying, what price are you paying to please other people? What price are you paying to become number one in this mirage of a competition for number one? I don't think this competition is impossible because there is no number one. And there's always better, always faster, always higher, always more successful, always more accomplished. And no matter how far you climb up this ladder, guess what? There'll be somebody ahead of you there. And then you'll have to do more. And that cracks you at a certain point, just like it cracked Simone. So thank you for the courage to step aside and teach all of us the courage to stop and ask, what prices am I paying? And I'm willing to kill myself literally or figuratively, to continue competing and pleasing other people. But there's another story in this Olympics that has not gotten so much recognition, and I would like to recognize it here. And that's the story of another American athlete by the name of Sam Kendricks. Sam Kendricks is a discharged soldier and a pole vaulter. And in the competitions, as he was running to jump with the pole, he heard the American anthem being played. He stopped literally mid-run, dropped his pole, and stood at attention to show honor for the national anthem. And I think this is such a beautiful act of values. It's a person who was willing to risk his competition, his chance to get the medal, the thing for which he trained for years, the thing for which he traveled to Tokyo. He was willing to risk his ability to compete and to get the medal. And why is that? Because his values, his loyalty to this country that he represents, and the loyalty to the national anthem took over. And yes, he's a soldier. So that kind of discipline, that kind of ability to put yourself aside and to put your values ahead of yourself, that's something that soldiers do. And that is something that Sam Kendricks showed. And you know what? He did not lose. And he was not penalized for his choice. He actually won the bronze medal. And he was the first American to win to win any medal, in fact, in this sport in the past 12 years. So that just goes to show you that people don't pay prices for their values. It is our values who make us who we are. And it is our values and our choice to uphold our values that give us the edge and the ability to succeed. So I would like to commend both Simone Biles and Sam Kendricks for making the right choice, for choosing life over competition, life over Olympics, life over sports, life over people-pleasing, life over medals. And what are your medals? We all have our own medals in life. We all have our own competitions in life. There's something that you are setting aside to jump with your own pole right now. What is that? What do you need to set your pole aside for to give honor and value to? That's the real choice. And that's the choice we should be making watching these Tokyo Olympics these days. Stay put for our next and final segment this week.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
And me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Hello, I am Walter Bingham. If you want to hear the news behind the news and the true perspective on world affairs, then the Walter Bingham File is the program for you. We bring you interviews with the movers and shakers, political commentaries, and on-the-spot reports of events as they happen. All here every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Israel time, 9 a.m. Eastern time. And it's all archived on our website. Make it a date.
Welcome back. So throughout this show, we have been talking about choices. Choices between life and death, between good and bad, between continuation and desisting. And it is not only individuals that make choices. Communities make choices too. And right now, the American Jewish community is starting to make some very unfortunate choices. For decades now, this community has been decoupling from its Jewish identity. and intermarrying at exceedingly high rates, reaching 60 and 70%. But in the past few years, the American Jewish community has been decoupling from Israel as well, from the other biggest Jewish community in the world, from their brothers, and from their land. And it is about this choice I would like to talk in this segment before we finish today's show. And actually, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to read an excellent piece written by Douglas Altabeff. He is the chairman of the board of Im Tirtzu, the largest grassroots Zionist organization in Israel. And I saw his piece in a newspaper called Jews Down Under, representing the Australian Jewish community. And I think that he really hit the nail on the head with this one. So I'm going to read it verbatim as he wrote it, and you can draw your own conclusions. Anyone looking for conclusive evidence that the American Jewish community is in a dangerous tailspin might have just found his smoking gun. A recently released survey by the Jewish Electorate Institute found that 25% of the surveyed American Jews said that Israel was an quote-unquote apartheid state, and 22% believed that Israel was committing genocide of the Palestinian Arabs. There has already been significant speculation about the credibility of this survey, its sample, its methodology, and the agenda of those who undertook the survey. Ironically, the implication is that the survey was conducted by a left-wing organization, presumably with the idea of conveying a message that American Jews are really not supportive of Israel. However, if this was the case, the survey said far more about those who conducted it, and yes, the respondents, than just a way to show disapproval of Israel. There's no way to contextualize this survey, no way to explain it away its sample base or methodology that doesn't change the unmistakable conclusion. American Jews are decoupling. They are decoupling not only from their brethren and the idea of a coherent Jewish people, but also from reality itself. This latest situation is truly frightening for what it says about the ability of American Jews to sustain themselves going forward. How will they maintain their sense of identity, assuming they seek to do so, when they're buying whole hog into the big lie and exhibiting a mass application of the Stockholm Syndrome, the identification with one's own oppressors? The Jewish people has always been challenged both by the prevailing big lie and the willingness of many of our brethren to throw in the towel and to join the ranks of our oppressors. However, these challenges were largely exhibited during periods of intense persecution, where it became irresistible for many Jews to just stop being marked for isolation, oppression, and even death. Fortunately, no such pressure exists in America for its Jews today. Nevertheless, there has been an astounding willingness to believe the most vicious accusations and calumnies about Israel. Perhaps, however, there are greater than seemingly evident pressures on American Jews, ones that they might not want to acknowledge, but pressures nevertheless to conform, adopt, and subscribe to certain narratives and perspectives. Given how factually moronic the idea of Israel as an apartheid state is, since the purported victims are not even part of the state, but rather are a foreign population whose leadership has adopted an eliminationist policy towards Israel, one is forced to conclude that this judgment represents the parroting of the condemnations of Israel's bitter enemies on the American progressive left. As a famously skeptical and analytical people, American Jews would be thought to be reluctant to buy into such condemnation in the absence of clear and convincing evidence. Unless the facts really do not matter, but what actually matters is who is making the accusations and the power and influence that they hold over vast swaths of the American Jewish community. Simply stated, it seems clear that for an enormous number of American Jews, being aligned with the progressive focus on intersectionality and its approved list of victims and oppressors is more important, far more important, than willingness to defend one's own. What, one must wonder, could make so many Jews so willing to condemn their own, other than a fear of their own cancellation? This is perhaps the real story behind the survey, the power of the progressives to ostracize those who would disagree, would bug the narrative and demand the right to support Israel while still extolling progressive principles. This power is reflected in American Jews' simultaneous adoption of truly scurrilous, vile, and dehumanizing accusations, and then making common cause with those who are not interested in justice or human rights, but rather the elimination of Israel. How did we get to this point? What has happened to have led to such a colossal betrayal, such a self-destructive untethering? Where has the leadership, the adults in the American Jewish room been? Where are all these birthright alumni who have seen the amazing reality of Israel for themselves, should be in position of input and influence? What other self-destructive admissions and confessions will American Jews be willing to make in order to keep from being devoured by the new Jacobins, the voracious progressives? Today, it is Israel. Tomorrow, it will be Jewish peoplehood. And the following week, might it not be Judaism? Jews are successful, therefore privileged, and closet supremacists. Jews are insular, therefore chauvinistic and exclusionist. Does anyone doubt that this is the logical progression, the next stops along the slippery slope, that it's surrendering one's own identity in the hopes of what? Who would want to be a member of the progressive club if the price of admission was self-abnegation and delegitimization? Ultimately, for many of the surveyed responders, that presumably for large segments of the American Jewish community, being Jewish is an accident of birth or a vestige of one's ancestry, rather than animating and directing part of one's life. For many, being Jewish means being moral and pursuing social justice. Tikkun olam. However, since you don't have to be a Jew to be moral or to pursue justice, there seems to be a question as to why one should even bother with the Jewish angle, particularly in the face of condemnation from those who one wants to be accepted by. For many, many years, many industry analysts predicted the bankruptcy of General Motors. To them, it was like watching a train wreck in super slow motion, an inevitability that took years and years to play out, but ultimately happened. Sadly, that seems to be the story of a great deal of the American Jewish community. Progressives did not undo American Jewry. American Jews are undoing themselves, having abandoned Jewish particularity and tradition, and being embarrassed to say that God exists, only to find themselves defenseless when called upon to account for the Israeli counterparts. Israel is just the first marker down the slope of the disappearance of the American Jewish community. Anti-Semitism will not subvert American Jewry. The Jews will do it to themselves. So like I said, this is the analysis of Douglas Altabef that he published in Jews Down Under, and I would have to agree. When an enormous portion of American Jewry considers itself to be unaffiliated, when Jews don't know what a synagogue looks like from the inside, not only the unaffiliated Jews don't know what a synagogue looks like from the inside, even Reformed Jews don't know what synagogue looks like from the inside. The latest Pew study has shown that 50% of American Jews who identify as Reform never step foot inside a synagogue. Another 35% of those who identify as Reform show up at the synagogue no more than a couple of times a year. When Judaism has no point, when Judaism has no practice, when Judaism has no weight in one's life, who needs it? And why suffer for it? And why carry the price? And Israel, Israel is far away. 60-70% of American Jews who are not Orthodox have never stepped foot in Israel. It's an idea. It's a theory. It's not a reality. It's certainly not in a reality that many young Jews today feel attached to. And so, they don't mind letting go of it, especially when the price for sticking up for Israel, for sticking up for one's Judaism, is so steep, when the psychological pressures are so heavy. As we sign off for the show, I'd like you to think about the choices that all of us are making in day-to-day life. Our personal choices, our social choices, and our community choices. And I wish all of us to make choices for life. Have a great week, and I will see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
If you're hearing this message, everyone else can too. Advertise with Israel News Talk Radio and get your message out to people. We'll build a personalized package for you. Contact advertising at israelnewstalkradio.com.
Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey, this is Jake in Anchorage, Alaska, and I love listening to all the super interesting interviews and up-to-date information on what's happening in Israel.
Hello, this is Anna King, originally from London, now living in Israel. And what can I say? Israel News Talk Radio is my cup of tea.
My name is Bhaskar. I'm from India, and I love listening because you get to know the truth and wonderful voices from this lovely country.
Mom!
Okay, wait a minute.
Hi, this is Chava Dax, and I'm calling for the rolling hills of Ma'ale Adumim, just north of Jerusalem. I always listen to Israel News Talk Radio to get all the latest news and commentary and to keep me up to date every day.
This is Sarah Dax from Ma'ale Adumim, and I'm 12. I wish Israel News Talk Radio was boring so my mom wouldn't listen to it all the time. Mom!
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.